selected for actualization from the blood pool and training to serve the aristocracy were lucky enough to be packed in transparent cubicles like rats. The Aristarchs were clever expropriators of utilitarian technology from any era for their own purposes. Paradoxically, the domination of the Aristarchs ended invention of new technology from humanity under their power. Artificial intelligence and history were the basic contemporary creators of the new for the aristocracy. Rising from an amphitheater's central plaza more than 120 stories high, the Shavella was entirely transparent, yet colored as selected by optimal program analysis for moon altering and control. Humans entered their life cycles at the ground level, where they could be intensely cultivated in basic training. A Gomer Fuhrer was assigned to each 100 inductees to direct indoctrination. If a poop arrived at formation wearing a lavender instead of a pink skirt for the day as ordered, the Fuhrer would chastise the private and admonish him to wear pink with command, dress right, dress. The Gomer Fuhrer would order the poops to display privates and reward his favorite with personal training. When the basic training formation was complete and the privates had left for their assigned tasks, the amphitheater became the center of mechanosaur entertainment spectacles, with humongous mechanical beasts fighting in monster-to-monster, claw-to-mandible combat. Survival of the fittest contests to win government alien world defense contracts brought much competition. Human poops of the 69 floors above ground level could watch, if they dared waste spare time with idle viewing, tremendous battles to the death of war machines. Achieving the nirvana of enslaved mind on the 70th floor could not be achieved easily or without a lot of personal sacrifice. In fact, the entire loss of self-interest was the best way to become modeled into the perfect image of the enslaved beast that was fashionable according to the pleasure of the Aristarchan court in any given era. Only through months of increasingly arduous and disciplined enslavement of thought could they know the perfect iterations of mindless conformity to the will of the actualizing AI that was personally programmed by the conniving Aristarchan troika in charge of the Diafron system. History records that the original Brazilian favela were pacified with technological surveillance technology, such as directed microphones and computer scurry mice, before the threat of independent alternative socioeconomic hierarchies was eliminated. The Aristarchan troika were mindful of the danger of training and environmental flaws and imperfections that could unintentionally generate a free mind, too dangerous to tolerate in the aristocratic empire. Thus, the Shavella were readily dissoluble from the top down, laced with anti-structure acid that thrice had been required to flow from spigots at the summits to eliminate entire communities contaminated with the virus of free thought. It was quite a tragedy to the Troika that appreciated how hard the poops struggled to enslave themselves, even in competition with others, in order to reach the 120th floor with a perfectly enslaved mind and achieve their heart's desire to fondle and kiss the asses of the Aristarchs, metaphorically speaking. Into Diafron's artificial mountain chain through a tremendous vertical cleft in pure stone supporting Shavella outside with myriad mechanical servo units, Hard Carbon rode to Shenzhen, entering his quest to find a mystical link to other stars. And even more, that he could not remember, lost as he was with the Symphony of Swine in ecstasy. Soon after arriving at Orbitron, John Dwight was relieved to find himself in the company of Lena Lube. She was a knowledgeable friend of the Blue Committee and someone he had spent some time with discussing elements of cosmology. You haven't been to Orbitron for very long, John. Let me explain some of the facts to you. I want to introduce you to the concept of a quantum cloud inner mind. Fine, Lena. I wondered for a time if I could make it out of Enchilada alive. You aren't the first to wonder that. Before the inflaton of the universe that occurred a split second after a mass energy pure quantum stable state received a word vibration causing instability and expansion from a singularity into space-time, the unified field of energy hadn't yet existed long enough to break down from a superhot state to cool and form gravity. Without gravity to make it attract into itself, there was apparently a natural inflation of a membrane rather than a solid mass. Gravity works at the speed of light, and no interaction with mass particle waves occurs faster. Before gravity existed, The original expanding membrane accelerated faster than light during inflation. I understood that 8 universes were drawn into a singularity, Lena. True enough, John, except it may be that there were just 7 drawn into the dot. The singularity wasn't itself without time and broke down those universes into something resembling a dimensionless Bose-Einstein plasma conserving information. Information external to the stable state was the stimulus opening the Big Bang, and the interval allowing the inflation after the Big Bang allows us to make inferences about the nature of space in the absence of gravity that can exist only with a breakdown of the unified field into mass and energy. What sort of inferences, Lena? For one thing, we can infer that without gravity, mass and energy could not meaningfully aggregate. Without gravity, matter would not form planets or stars, and anything that existed would have no fundamental direction toward the built-up center point of all attracted mass of the universe. That is, incidentally, conserved. Gravity can be overcome by a greater power of a meta-universal state. Space has a different dimensional nature in the absence of gravity, or gravity was reversed in direction after emerging from the singularity, allowing expansion of the universe as an inflaton before flipping back around as 4 spatial dimensions flattened out. At least that's how I see it, John. So the information that is a map of the location of all mass and energy cohering within a virtual quantum field is the quantum cloud inner brain of information we interact with. To understand and travel the material universe from time equal near 0 to time equal near omega, regardless of location, Lena? Well, John, I would say that more like, in addition to location, time is a value-added mapping element applied somewhat like a natural atomic structure, to speak with a metaphor. All of the information from the 7 or 8 universes is conserved, and all of the information of this universe is pre-known as well to the supermind that is God. Yes, Lena, I would think that would not be an exhaustive definition of his omniscience. If the singularity is more than a zero-dimensional point, if the start of the universe had something besides a spherical configuration, gravity might be able to prevent the release of a unified energy field from becoming mass. E equal mc squared was Einstein's most famous formula. As energy is conserved and slows down into mass with the expansion of the universe, while transforming the energy required for continuing expansion into space-time, with new acceleration entering about 7 billion years after the first expansion and inflaton during the first second from singularity, questions arise about what new quanta are being converted and what the dark or unknown second phase energy is. It could not be new energy in the universe, since energy and mass are conserved through convertible. Dark energy may be converting itself into mass, or the configuration of space-time is being distorted by the new conversion of mass and energy. It could be that space-time dimensions at some point run backwards to reverse time and space in part of the universe, quite apart from mass. The dark energy may be left over from the inflaton and universe expansion as part of the process. Mass is the remainder subtracted from the energy of singularity expansion. I think that's not quite accurate, John. Energy is not yet mass. Compacted to a singularity, it is not yet even energy. It may exist in an unknown state as pure dimensional space. If it existed within a line originally, it would be unbound in one dimension and extended so far as its energy allowed. The forces of energy would be unequally bound and unstable. Mass could not form from energy and would have no singular center to it, if it could exist and were somehow to be big banged and inflated away. Sure, I can imagine that, Lena. If mass could be attracted to black hole conditions that were linear, the universe would be very different than it is. What about Orbitron, though, Lena? What sort of a world is it really? Orbitron is one of a few hundred artificial worlds with a double hole protected atmosphere we have made by hollowing out planets and reconfiguring their mass. Though we inhabit the surface of these worlds, the interiors are more than chewy nougat. Just kidding, John. Each of these planets serve as training and technological development centers for free humanity. That seems like a good idea if humanity is really threatened by the Aristarchs. Most certainly we are, John. Though we have invented a technology to shape space and deposit your information faster than light, there is some There is another latent technology, far faster than light travel, somewhat more crude than ours. Actually, we use it to form gravitational defense and concealment shields that prevent our enemies from viewing us remotely. Let me sketch it to you briefly. Waves are the result of a force traveling through a medium and temporally displacing and changing the shape of the medium. Gravitational force, on the other hand, attracts distant objects of mass rather than displacing it. It draws it toward a center, like a core deforming mass into a line singularity as a trait. That is an emergent phenomenon caused by the warp shaping what seems to be space itself, yet is actually the information of virtual space itself. Mass exists in 4 dimensions of space and affects it at even the smallest level. There are no actual gravitons exchanged between mass objects as a form of gravity. The more mass is aggregated, the greater the concatenated information brought to the aggregation depleting space of information for mass. So mass is drawn, as it were, toward aggregated mass instead of disregarding it. Information is equivalent to structure maps. When those are lost, just sentience might infer what information was before its destruction. Sentience duplicating information lost to space may be increasing information in the universe. I've wondered about how the conservation of energy compares to the conservation of information. If energy mass is neither created or destroyed, how can information be like that? Information does not exist without pre-design. That is, the information of the structure of the universe at all spacetimes in its existence does not exist until it has all occurred. It begins as near zero and increases as spacetime mass expands, creating structure to map with information. Instead, mass affects the information of virtual space, and in the process liberates space of mass in some respects. We've learned to program virtual space, and unfortunately, that information exists closer to the Aristarchan Empire too. Within it, one may learn to create gross and highly destructive space-time shortcuts, Aristarchs, without doubt, being as environmentally inefficient and profligate as they are, would use that technology to attempt to enslave all of the rest of humanity beyond their present range of power in the Silky Way. And what of Orbitron, Lena? The economy of Orbitron was built without money as a medium of exchange. Money, being the root of all evil, attracts corrupt and social structures to it for itself. Illegal drug sales, for example, are challenging to accomplish without the existence of money. Bartering or trading commodities directly for illegal drugs would create quite an inefficient and unwieldy phenomenon. The 18th century inventor of capitalism created an economic philosophy well adapted to the ecospheric and sociological paradigm of his time. Yet, like the 19th century economic philosophy of Marxism, it was nothing more than a single economic philosophy. Just one degree amid 360 degrees of potential economic philosophies or directions that could be innovated or invented. It was suitable to the challenges of its day. Each age of human social history should discover and apply its most rational, just, and useful economic philosophy that would serve social goals with a rather ecospheric criteria, and the latter may differ radically. If one has a space station world utopia with sustainable and healthy ecosphere and plentiful workstations for the design of any sort of physical structure, at least in the abstract, including the design of evolution systems for an uninhabited galaxy, there would be no need for a redistributive or trade economy within the parameters of the space station world for residents at all. Toynbee believed that without challenges, human societies do not progress. Adam Smith believed that free trade could create a better life for all in his era, and he was probably right considering the spatial extent and low population of the Earth, as well as the inefficiency of government at accomplishing most things beyond war, at which it was easily the best power. For Orbitron, free enterprise parameters have been set for all that allocate quantitative material quotas for the use of anyone with the need for material to actualize his and her or her inventions. Because the worlds are artificial constructions to start with, the ecosphere need be free from destructive, non-sustainable uses, though we are glad to receive ideas that would enhance efficiency and liberate material for more innovation and inventive applications.